for those of you that don't know, I want you guys to tell us a little bit about what you do. Because personally, I have been blessed by your ministry, but I want you guys to talk about the work that you do and Ignite and all the amazing stuff that you guys have going on.
Sure. Go ahead. Ladies first. Ladies first.
Okay. Wow. Well, I go by PM, or my name is Yemisi Odusanyas, but people call me PM, and he's PY. We co-pastor Ignite Church in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we've been doing this. I think this is going to be our 5th year.
Yeah, 5 years.
It's our 5th year pastoring this church, but we've been involved in ministry, for many, many years, not just at Jesus House, but at the other churches. Well, for me, the other churches I attended back home. And what we try to do is to just bring life, energy, a different perspective to church with young adults. And we try to do church differently. We try to, connect with people on a different level. We want to be able to have people experience God the way that we have on so many different levels, and even beyond, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has their different experiences with God, and we want to recognize that, everyone's experience is important, is different, and Ignite is a place that we allow people to, just express their love and discover who they are and touch the lives of other people.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You didn't miss a beat, and all that, and then I'm her husband.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, one of the reasons why I thought about having the All About Love series, because I'm all about doing all these series that's really aimed at empowering people. But I felt like when it comes to millennials, like I personally feel like we have a lot of resources when it comes to the right jobs and different things like that, but not a lot of resources when it comes to relationships. And I feel like social media hasn't really done a good job as far as setting the example. A lot of times what we see, everything is not what it seems. And I wanted to bring people together that have been seasoned. You guys have been married 10 years now?
Yeah, it's going to be 11.
Exactly. So I wanted to bring people that have been seasoned to talk to us about seasoned, but also young, to talk to us millennials about some of the things that we can look out for when it comes to relationships and dating. Because I feel like even in talking to my friends, that's one area that I feel like we struggle with a lot, because there's not a lot of great examples of how to do it, especially in a godly way, a way that's relatable and applicable to the world that we live in today. That's why we did this. And I thought about people that I didn't just want to talk to anyone, but people that I have personally dealt with and people that have been a blessing to me. So that's the whole premise of it. And that's why I wanted you guys to come on the show. Now, usually what I'll do is I ask, how did you guys meet?
Well, I mean, this is always a long story, but we're honored to be in your show, Lysious, and thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
To come and share the little we know, very little, because we're still learning this thing called marriage. But how did we meet? There's her story, there's his story, and then there's the truth. So I'm trying to figure out what version I should tell you.
Right.
We don't have that much time.
I know we ain't got that much time.
It's so long and sometimes inaccurate. So I'll let you start, and once you start veering towards the left, I'll kind of reel you back in.
All right, here's the long and short of it. Okay. I came in, I was a knight in shining armor. She looked at me and said, "This is the guy I've been looking for all my life." And no.
Let's go back.
All right, let me go back.
Right.
So we met. I noticed her a while in church, and it was like we met in church. So I noticed her in something we call our Good News Network, which is how we get our announcements to the workforce, to the church every Sunday. And there was an event coming up, which was a singles event, and she was the spokesperson for the singles ministry. Yeah. And I remember sitting close to my best friend in church then, and we looked at ourselves like, wow, like she's been in this church? Like, what have I missed? So I remember going to that event and she wasn't there. Then I went to the next event, she wasn't there. I went to like 4 months, I'm like, wait, hold up, was this false advertising? I mean, what you guys showed is not the thing I'm finding here. So I gave up the search, and I decided to take something in church called a foundational class, where you just get to learn the basics of the Bible again, the Trinity, learning about the Holy Spirit. And so I walked into the class, and who did I see sitting in the class? It's been this girl that I've been looking for so long. So now, when this story happens from here, it's two different stories. So I'm going to let her tell her story.
It's two different stories. So he comes into the classroom and he sees me and he's grinning from ear to ear. Of course, I don't understand why. But, you know, later I discovered that he's been going around looking for me and he couldn't find me. So he opens the door and I'm sitting across from him and he's just like, you know, asking me, is that seat empty?
She was pointing to me like, come sit.
Why would I even point to you?
That's what I remember. That's
not the truth. Anyone who knows me knows that I would never be like, come sit next to me. Anyway, he was like, is that seat open? And I said, sure. So he came, he sat next to me. We didn't really talk much during the class. He was just looking at me, staring at me. And then after class, we chatted, small talk. And then, I think the course was like 8 weeks or something. Yeah. You had missed the first 2 weeks. So we had about 6 weeks left. And, he was just talking to me. He asked if I wanted to study with him, study the Bible with him. And we had some study dates and, we became friends. We went on this whole roller coaster and the rest is history, really.
Now, let me ask you this. When you saw her, like, what was it about that moment that made you feel like, because I'm always very curious about, like, some people say, I knew in that moment that this was the one for me. And a lot of people say, well, I didn't really feel that way, but over time I got a conviction. What was that experience like for you?
For me, I guess when I saw her, maybe I'll call it the Holy Spirit, because he guides me. But it was almost like an epiphany, like, man, this is the person I've been looking for. Wow. It was almost like, it wasn't, you see, I don't know how to explain it. I haven't seen anyone else that did that to me. And it's not like I wasn't in love or I wasn't in a relationship, but with her, it was just different. I just knew this was different. Now, even when we started dating, started hanging out and then tried to wait to date, there was a point where we took a break and all that. And at the back of my mind, I was like, even if this doesn't work out, I feel accomplished. Like, it brought out the man that I was out of me. That relationship. So for me, I guess that's, and then 11 years later, we're still in that spot.
Wow, so you were okay with the fact that even if things didn't work out between the two of you guys, you were okay with that?
Yeah, I was telling myself I was okay. The reason I was okay was because I had the opportunity and the privilege of spending time with her. And
there's a reason I asked that. There's a reason I asked that, because one of the things I'm learning now, even when people are talking to you with some of my personal situations, is that when it comes to love and relationships, it's the one when you're willing and able to let go, because if you can let go and not be so desperate about the situationship, and if it's meant to be, it always works out. And I think that's something that's so valuable, like, that I'm really understanding now. So that's why I asked that question. How did you feel? Because at what point did you feel like, all right, okay, this might be the one for me?
Me?
Yeah. Did you ever feel that way?
Oh, well, so I think with him, there was so much I liked about him, there was so much I liked about him and that I discovered during our friendship. We were friends for about a year, and that was our season of getting to know each other. He had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. I had just ended, it wasn't too long, maybe a year and a half, an 18-month relationship. And we really wanted to be intentional about what we were doing. So while we were really attracted to one another, like most people are attracted to the people they're friends with, they date, we wanted to make sure that we wanted to be led by the Holy Spirit. So we enjoyed spending time with each other, but we were okay at keeping it at a friendship level until we actually felt like, yes, it was time to take it up a notch. And for me, he will tell you, my wall was like this high. like this high.
Jericho wall had nothing on this lady, I'll tell you.
I just, you know, I'm the type of person that
Why was that? Why was that? Was that because of a past experiences?
It was past relationships had something to do with it, past friendships, but I also don't think everyone is worthy of getting all of me, right?
Wow.
Like, I don't feel like I need to open up as an entire book to everyone. There's certain people who will know one dimension of me. Other people will know a deeper dimension. I just don't feel like I can give all of me to everybody that comes into my life. And the way that I guard myself is by putting up a wall and finding out more about you and seeing how committed you are to finding out about me. And he was committed. Like,
I knocked around the wall 7 times. So, on the 6th time, I blew the trumpet.
Right.
So extra. But, you know, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I really got to know him. And I did. And the more I knew him, I mean, we were friends. That's one thing that I would say. And even till today, you know, sometimes we have to take off our husband and wife hat and put on our best friend hat when we need to talk about some things. Like, we do that all the time. We'll be like, you know, babe, take off your husband hat. I need to ask you something as a friend. And he'll go there. So we really wanted to make sure our friendship was established. And for me, it's easier for me to be more vulnerable with a friend than it is for me to be vulnerable with someone who's just trying to date me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. I hear that a lot. I've been hearing that a lot lately. And why do you guys, because I feel like sometimes people, and this is sometimes the kind of struggle that a lot of people have when it comes to being friends. It's like, well, why should I be friends with you when whole time I'm really wanting to be in a relationship with you? So I want you to speak on why important that is to like be friends first before taking that leap. Because people say, well, I wouldn't be true to some people say to me, Lysious, well, I wouldn't be true to myself if I pretend to want to be her friend when really I want to be in a relationship with her. So how do you deal with that?
So it's the whole thing of, we have this whole mentality of, and I used to have that thing before, the mentality of, you know, once she says I do, or once I say I do, then I'm ready for this, then I can be committed to this relationship, or I can, but we're missing that friendship zone is the preparation phase. And you don't see that phase is, if you miss that phase, there's certain things you're missing out on. You're missing the highs, the lows, the cues, all those things that you need to learn in that period. So, you know, we feel like, you know, once I make a promise at the altar, make a promise, make a party, and then, oh, I'm just going to be ready for marriage. No, in that season is where that work needs to be done. Because if you get that ring, or if you get that promise, make that promise without being prepared, you're just going to be frustrated. So what that commitment does to you is that it makes you eligible. So it makes you, you know, and you're if you're not ready for what you're taking on, then you can't become miserable. And that's why you see a lot of people where they got married, not getting to know each other, that friendship zone. And then they get married and they're like, who did I really marry? I don't know this person. So, because trust me, sometimes it's the sex, you get tired of sex. And that's the truth.
She's like, what?
They're so tired. You're like, you know what? So it's more than just that sex. It's more about now that friendship. Like, if I take sex out the picture, and if I take all that, who's this person like? Can I spend time with this person? Do I enjoy being around this person? I mean, this pandemic has taught you, like, you better enjoy the person you're married with, because you're locked in the house 24/7. What you gonna do?
That's amazing. That's amazing. You want to add to that?
I mean, he said it. I think friendship is key, because the lust, the attraction, all of that, you know, fades away over time. I mean, you see these couples that are married for 80 years, 70 years, and you're like, how are they staying together for so long? It's the friendship that they built, you know, it's the fact that they truly enjoy being around that person, because love will take you so far. It will take you so far. You want to like the person you're with. And I think, you know, that was one of the things that I discovered about him. Not only was I attracted to him and I liked his personality, I actually liked him as a person. And I was like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I wouldn't mind being his friend. Like, we could still be friends because of who he was. So, you know, it's so much deeper than you know, the representative that you meet the first 3 months that you're dating somebody. You know, you're that perfect person, has everything together. It's so much more than that. And for us, and I think, you know, successful relationships have a foundation of the Lord, obviously, but a friendship with one another. Because that's what will take you through the tough times when bills can't get paid, or when you guys are getting on each other's nerves, or when you're having, you know, trials that are just beating you up. You're going to want a friend. And who better to be your friend than the person you decided to spend the rest of your life with?
That's amazing. One of the things I've been learning, like, during this time and season in my life is really the power of, like, self-love. I remember I've had a lot of experiences with relationships, dating, and a lot of my friends know I'm very, like, open with talking about it. And 2018, I had an experience, and I remember just reaching out to P all about it, talking to him about that experience. And one of the things that he told me that I would never forget is he said, Lysious, your validation and your sense of self-worth should never be tied to any man, woman, boy, or girl, to anything. It should be tied to your knowledge of who you are in God. And I want you to touch on that, speak to how important that is, because I am seeing a lot of us in this day and age who haven't really practiced enough self-love, don't know who we are. And usually what happens is when you go into a relationship without having enough self-love, you're looking to somebody else to validate you, to give you something that you'd have given yourself. So I want you to speak on how powerful that is.
You hit the nail on the head. And because for me, I was actually in that space before, and I think that's why for me it's so important, like making sure people get to love themselves and discover who they are. The reason it's important is that you're never going to be whole with validation from somebody else. There's no amount of validation that somebody else can give you that can make you whole. But it's not our fault, and I want to break it down, because we're living in a social media age. The social media, as great and as good as it is, your validation comes when people like your video, when people share it, when people that's the value. So that's the society we're living in. You don't go to a restaurant right now without asking for reviews. Like if you see a restaurant, I'm going to that restaurant, it has a 1-star review, you're going to what's going on? And so everybody, we're living in this society where it's about validation, and if I don't have that validation, then I can't move forward. And the danger in relationships when you don't know who you are, don't love yourself, is that now you go into a relationship thinking this other person is going to come and make me happy. This other person is going to validate me. This other person is going to make me whole. And in their mind, subconsciously, they're also coming into the relationship expecting you to make them happy, you to make them whole. So now you have two broken people coming into a relationship and trying to figure out, okay, you're not making me happy. Okay, you're not making me happy. And now we have this disconnect here. So, and that's why when Christ was talking about, he says, you know, the greatest commandment, love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. And he says, and the second one is this, that you love your neighbor. Don't just love your neighbor. You have to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Meaning it starts with me. I have to be in that space where I understand my value. I understand my worth. So that way nobody can just come talk to me anyhow. And, you know, I always tell my wife, you know, I'm glad that she doesn't seek validation from me and I don't seek validation from her. It's that's the cream on the cake. You know, that's the cream, you know, the icing on the cake. That validation, So.
And I think, you know, it's so important, self-love, even when you're in a relationship. Because if the person you're with can sense that you don't value yourself, what motivation are they going to have to value you? People are not, they're never going to value you more than you value yourself. That is never going to happen. If you value yourself as a 6, he's going to value you as a 5.879. It will never be more than a 10. It won't. Because I can't love you more than you love yourself. And the danger of that is if you end up with someone who may be emotionally, mentally, physically abusive, they can manipulate your mind to a place where you feel like not even a 6, but a 5, or a 4, or a 3, or a 2, right? But if you go into that relationship knowing that I am a 7, an 8, a 9, maybe even a 10, and there's nothing you can tell me, he or she will have to think twice or 3 times before they try to bring you down, make you feel less than who you are, and disrespect you, degrade you, devalue you. They're gonna have to think otherwise, because if Lysiouss already think he's a 10, there's nothing I can tell that. Even if I wanted to try it, the lowest I can go is a 9. I can never go lower than that. Because you've already set the standard, and people treat you the way you require them to treat you. If you don't require it, if you don't demand it, they don't have to adhere to it.
Right. That's amazing. That's wow. That's that's really amazing. And I want you guys to speak, because I think that you guys work with a lot of young people, a lot of millennials, and that's really our demographic, and really the people that I spend a lot of time with. And I want you to talk to millennials today when it comes to dating and relationships. Give me your top 5 lessons that you've learned so far, something that you would say to millennials today about dating, relationship, and marriage.
Ooh, 5.
5.
Y'all can share it. You can
but okay, let me hit it. I'm gonna just, I don't know what order of importance, but we're just gonna throw some things out at will. Number 1 is sex is not the answer. Sex doesn't make you close. Sex doesn't, you're not a car that he needs to test drive. For you ladies, from men, it doesn't validate you. Sex isn't for that. Sex is for making babies. And sex is a bonding agent. So one thing I mentioned one time was I don't believe they're soulmates. Like, people say, oh, I met my soulmate and things like that. I don't believe in it. I believe when you find that person you want to get married to, what makes your soul mate, and that word, soul, mate, when you say something is mating, when animals mate, is because they're having sex. So when your soul is mating is when that sex is happening. So that's why if you're mating before you marry and then you break up, now it's a big mess. So sex is not the answer.
Wow, you're gonna have to. Wait a minute. We're gonna have to stay on that a little bit. He said, because I don't want people to miss that. I don't want people to miss it. That's a jam. He said, so mate, meaning that there has to be a mating, an interaction, a communication between your souls before your body. Oh my God.
And the thing about it is, God was explaining this to me a while back, is when heaven sees sex happening, to them that's husband and wife. And that's where, so there are things that it's a bonding agent. When the Bible says 2 shall become 1. It's that bonding, the sex is a super glue that comes in, like, oh.
But what do you say to people who say, but I want to see we're compatible sexually, because sexual compatibility is important. So I want to see we're sexually compatible before we even take this step. What do you say to people who say that?
So that means that you are not basing your relationship on the key essentials that is required to sustain the relationship. That's what it means. Because if you want to see if you guys are sexually compatible, that means that's your driving force. What if you're not sexually compatible? Which many people are not when they first get married. But that's when counseling comes into play. That's when communication comes into play. That's when therapy comes into play. People don't tell you this, but married people go through stuff to make it work. They read books. They watch movies. I don't know what kind of movies, but they watch movies.
They communicate.
They play with toys. They do all types of things to make it work. You can never use that as an excuse. Because every individual is different. Our bodies are different. There's supposed to be that exploration phase where you discover about your partner's body and you guys try to make it work. But I have yet to meet a married couple who did not have sex before they got married, and the lack of sex prior to marriage was what ruined their marriage. I've yet to meet that couple.
Yeah.
I've yet to meet someone that said, you know what, we didn't try it out. We got married. We found out we were not compatible, and we got a divorce.
Yeah.
If staying on that topic, not trying to preach.
And I'm going to be right back.
All right.
I'll be right back.
Okay, cool.
Not trying to preach, but staying on that topic. So with the woman at the well, remember that issue when Jesus got there and it says, and they're talking, they're having this long conversation, and then Jesus says, you know what, go bring me your husband. And she says, I don't have a husband. And he says, yeah, I know. Because even the 5 other ones you've been with weren't your husband. And the one you're with right now is not your husband. So to me, I'm like, how does he know she has 5? Because in the soul realm, they've been counting it. She's been with this one, she's been with that one, she's been with that. And to them, that's the marriage. And it's going like that. So, and once you have sex before marriage, and I'm not saying for everybody, because I love God, because God always has that, there's grace for us, but I don't want us to abuse grace, but he always has that grace for us. But what happens is, if you end up together, even people who end up getting married and had sex before marriage, they find out that even after they're married, there are issues. This whole compatibility thing, it still comes up. Now, the people that didn't, and split up, now I'm married and I'm in the bed with my wife, and then another image of another woman is flashing in my head, because in my soul, she's tied somewhere. So number one,
sex is not the answer.
Number 2.
I get back just in time.
I know. Number 2 is time reveals.
Take your time. Okay.
I'm going to say it again. Time reveals. Whoever you're with, I don't like when I hear people rushing into marriage, or they're rushing and they're moving to the next step so fast. Time reveals. Like my wife always says, she wants to see how you act in the winter. She wants to know what your temperament is like in the summertime. She wants to know what you're like in the springtime when it's raining. But time reveals, because as humans, we could only hide for so long. After a certain while, we're going to have to let the guard down. And what you want is, you want to know that person after the guard is down, because that's who you're going to get married to. And that's where the work begins.
You also, just piggybacking off of what he's saying.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. You want to be able to see how they handle different circumstances, and you can't do that in one month. How does he handle pain? How does he handle frustration? How does he handle anger, death, joy? All of these things that are bound to happen when you get married. How does he figure this out ahead of time? Now, there is no secret formula, like you have to date for 18 months or 2 years. We don't believe in that, but we do believe in you spending time getting to know the person you're with. We heard someone say recently that the dating season, or some people call it courtship, is the time for you to collect data on this person. How do they respond? How does he treat his mother? Right? If you've only been with him for two weeks and you already know this is the person you're gonna marry, how do you know how he treats his mother when his mother is sad? Or happy? Or it's important for you to collect as much data as you can during that season, and time will reveal. There's so much we've discovered about ourselves in that 1 year time that we were friends. We were friends for 1 year.
Oh, we still discovering.
We dated for 1 year.
It's a continuous process,
And we're still discovering, even during this quarantine season. We're learning more and more about each other. Some good, some not so good. But the point is, you're learning more. But what I will say is that the things I'm discovering about him now is a deeper level of the things that were introduced to me when we first started dating. So it wasn't like I learned something completely different, because I spent my time trying to get to know him. I was asking the difficult questions. What are your goals? Where do you see yourself? Which was going to be my my next. Well, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It was going to be my next point, like point number 3. So point number 1 was sex is not the answer. Point number 2 is time reveals. Take your time. Point number 3 is potential is not the solution.
Okay, see, I'm gonna stop you right there, because we literally just had a huge conversation. Last year I was in LA, and it was in the Love, Losses, and Lessons series, and on one of the episodes, somebody says potential would not pay the bills. Like, you could potentially have a check, but it doesn't mean that's a check. But then I want you to break it down, because a lot of people say, what if you go into a relationship seeing what somebody could possibly be? Because the way that I personally look at potential is, you can't go into a relationship, like, everybody has certain needs and what things that you're looking for. And I believe that before you get into a relationship with somebody, that person should have those things that you're looking for in that current moment. Because you can't say, well, if this person doesn't know how to take care of his mom, like you said, you can't say, well, I'm gonna get with him because he could potentially learn how to take care of his mom. So I want you to really break it down, because I think that there's a lot of confusion as to what does it really mean when it comes to potential. What are we talking about here?
Okay, so potential. And, you know, I used to always think, oh, you know, he has potential, or I have great potential and all. Potential, not every woman has the ability to cultivate the potential in the guy.
Let me get it.
So, and that's why I said potential is not the solution. He might have potential. Right. He might be destined for greatness, but that doesn't mean you have the capacity, you have the wherewithal, you have the strength or the patience, the bandwidth to be able to help him cultivate it. The Bible example of where I see potential, how it happened, was with the story of Boaz and Ruth. And I'm going to break it down like this.
Right.
Ruth sees this guy, he potentially could be my husband. But you know what Boaz did was he left cues.
Right.
As they were going, he told his man, you know, drop a little bit of food here. She's speaking. So what I'm saying is, as a man, I've got to be able to drop some things along the way. So I'm not showing I'm not at the full potential yet of what I can be, but let me drop some things along the way. So in his word and what he's saying, the potential, I'm going to finish school in a year. We've been dating for 3 years. You still haven't finished it in 1 year. Exactly. So, and you're saying you have potential. Right. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do this. Okay, show me. So you've got to show. Once you see signs of potential, then, now, you know, people talk about, I got to test, and that's where they put the sex in, like, we got to know where we're compatible. No, it's the potential compatibility. Like, am I compatible? That's where the compatibility test comes in. Like, can I deal with his highs, his lows? Can I help him meet where he's going? What things is he dropping along the way? To me, that's what potential reveals. So, and not every woman has the patience. No, everyone has the skill to be able to go.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think, you know, I love how the example that you gave, because it's so true. A man can have a potential and be destined for greatness, but it's not every woman that can bring or help him, be his helpmeet to get to that greatness. You know, and I think it's important for us to realize that. I mean, potential, it sounds really good. It sounds so sweet. It sounds like you are not selfish, and that you are you're seeing beyond now. You're seeing into the future, right? Because potential means he has the ability to one day get there, right? So you're seeing beyond today. But if you don't have what that person needs to help cultivate that potential and make it a reality, he's going to be in potential forever. He'll be in that state of potential forever. There comes a point where potential has to become reality. And do you have the skills? Do you have the tools? Do you have the patience? Do you have the bandwidth to get from potential to reality?
Absolutely. So number one, sex is not the answer. Take your time and don't go with potential.
Yep. Number four, right? Are we number four now?
Yeah, we're number four.
Number four, you've got to find out, it's not just about being a Christian. What's your value system? What are your goals? Because a lot of times we try and hide that under the umbrella of, he's a Christian and, you know, he's a God-fearing man. What does that really mean? I mean, what does it? I've seen God-fearing men beat the crap out of their wives, and I'm like, he was God-fearing man. So you've got to have, so it's more about just being I mean, it's a good foundation that he's a Christian, he's God-fearing, but let me really see what you mean by that. What's your value system? What are your goals in life? What are your plans in life? So what are your beliefs? So,
and do they align with mine? You know, we don't have to, you know, you can be going to the same church and the same ministry, the same department, and you all can both be single and you're not aligned. You know, people think of people being unequally yoked, meaning a believer and a non-believer. You can both be Christians in the same denomination and be unequally yoked. Why? Because you want to be a missionary. Your vision for your life is to travel to Czechoslovakia and preach the word.
Right.
But his vision for his life is to stay in Miami, and if he is gonna preach, it's gonna be to the people on Rodeo. I said Miami, wherever.
Rodeo Drive.
You know, so are your visions the same? If your dream for your life is to be in a totally different place, and not just a physical location, but as far as some of the things that you're doing, are you all compatible?
Yeah.
You need somebody who needs to come home every single night. Then it's probably going to be difficult for you to be married to a truck driver. That's just the reality of it. Because he cannot be home every single night. Is your vision for your marriage to be married to somebody who starts work at 9 and gets off at 5? Well, maybe you can't really be married to an OBGYN. Because babies come at all times of the night. You know, like just figuring out what it is. And, you know, sometimes people don't really know what their vision is until they meet someone. And then they discover that, I didn't know what my vision is, but I know it's not that. And they don't want to leave because they feel like if I let him go, I might miss it. So really, and this goes back to loving yourself, discovering yourself, knowing what your vision is, listen, when we started dating, before the day when we started dating, you know, I love this story because I knew he was going to ask me. Are we ready? Can we make it official? And I think I shared this with you before, Lysious. You probably heard this before, that I needed confirmation from 3 different people, right? And I got my confirmation. Of course, I didn't tell him that because I'm still a lady and I want to be treated like a lady and I wanted to be pursued. And when we started talking about it, I said, you know what? I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to go to the next level. But hold on one second. Let me bring out my notebook. I have 5 questions I need you to answer.
And you literally said that.
Sorry?
You literally said that.
I literally did. And he looked at me like, he was like, what? And I said, yeah, I have 5 questions. I want you to answer.
Mind you, we at dinner.
We're at dinner.
I'm like, what? Who does that?
I need to know. But you know what I did do also is I brought a notebook for him too. I said, I brought one for you too. Go ahead and write down the things that I'm saying, our visions, our goals. Let's see if we align, because we know we're attracted to each other. We feel that we're being led by the Spirit. And you know, sometimes, you know, you're not sure if that's the Holy Spirit or if that's your spirit talking to you.
It's a lot of spirits.
Are we aligned? Exactly. Are we aligned? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How do you deal with this? These were questions that we were talking about before, but now I was taking notes and I wanted him to know that I was documenting what he was saying. And I kid you not, to this day, we still have those notebooks and we go back to those notebooks every once in a while. Now, we might have swayed a little bit, but we have it documented that this is what we said on November 11, 2009, you know, we were going to do. How does this line up to where we are right now? So it's important to have those difficult conversations, ask those difficult questions, make sure that you are equally yoked. Being a Christian, that's like a no-brainer. That's like the foundation, right? It's more than that. It's more than being a Christian. It's going a little bit deeper. You know what you want and what type of life you want and the type of companion you want. Your job is to make sure you identify if he is that person. And if he is not, that's okay. The best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and to get into a relationship that is going to end not so well.
Thank you. Now, before we go to the last one, I see a lot of people are joining now. We're talking about, you're giving us 5 tips, lessons they've learned so far as it relates to like dating and relationships. And the first one is sex is not the answer. Take your time. Don't get caught up in potential. Okay. And then the 4th one is make sure your value system aligns with the other person. So what's the last one?
What's the last one? What's the last one, baby?
All right. I got so much. I got to give you this last one. The last one is, what is the financial health? Financial health of both parties. How do you spend? What is your debt? I'm not saying it's a deal breaker,
but
I'm saying it's a deal breaker.
Wow. Okay.
So let me say it again. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but it is eventually going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
And the reason is I love, I think it was Andy Stanley that put it like this, that if you don't deal with certain issues in your singleness, they checking into the basement of your marriage, lifting weights and just waiting for that right time to show up.
Mm.
So what happens is if you don't deal with the financial issues, and for us, we dealt with some of it. I'm going to be honest, we didn't deal with everything. We took Financial Peace University, and I think and what Financial Peace University let us do was it put us on a
level playing
field. Like, oh, I understand she's the saver, I'm the spender, and things like that. But I wish now that I dealt with some things earlier in terms of my debt, because I didn't want to bring it into the marriage, because in the first year, then it became a burden. Thank God that, you know, the testimony is different now. But then it became a burden on not just her and then me. So it's like, oh, not just me, sorry. But now I'm putting this burden of this debt on her. So in my singleness, if I had dealt with that, my financial problems, my financial, what's the financial foolishness? It's like a good way of putting it. If I had dealt with it, then it will teach me what to do, because we talk to, you know, people, and we see people and counseling and things like that. And so majority of the times what I see is there's always a financial component to the issues.
Yeah.
And those financial issues, if you're able to deal with it from the beginning, if you're able to deal with it in your singleness, I talk about this thing of, I call it the DNA of singles, DNA. And it's not, number one is to be debt free. Number one is to have no baggage, and then to abstain from sex. Debt free, no baggage, abstain from sex. Debt free, no baggage, abstain from sex. And we kind of touched on all three today, but it's that financial component. As much as we don't like to talk about it, it's the elephant that always comes out. It's like it shows up and I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah. Now, is how would you? Because I know that a lot of people talk about, well, you know, money is not the answer to everything. Like, how do you on that same topic of finance? Like, when it comes to, well, who makes more money or that sort of thing, or am I making enough, or am I making at a certain level before I get into a relationship? I want you to apply that to how can we navigate that? Because some people say, well, money's not the answer to everything. So even if he's not, you know, doesn't have a good job, or, you know, all that matters is I love him. How does that, you know?
Well, I think that's noble, but love doesn't pay the bills, right? So as long as you are okay with not meeting your bill payment every month, go ahead and depend solely on love. But there's so many other factors that come into play that love will not be able to sustain the relationship. Like friendship, we talked about that earlier. But financially, you know, he doesn't always have to make more than she. For some people, you know, the woman is okay being the breadwinner. Is your husband okay with you being a breadwinner? That's the question. So that goes back to being, you know, equally yoked. You guys have the same vision. Is he gonna feel less of a man because I'm bringing in 3-4 times more than him? If he's not, and you know what kind of man you have, if he's not, so be it. That's not a problem for you. But you both have to have a clear understanding of your finances and what role money is going to play. It becomes a problem when you have this idea of, listen, when I get married, his money is going to be my money and my money is going to be my money, right? And then you get into marriage and he's like, okay, let's set up this joint account. And you're like, wait, joint account? We didn't talk about this ahead of time. You know, it's important to talk about these difficult questions when you are in the stage of dating and courtship. So you know, and you're making an educated decision. You're not just guessing and hoping. For some people, the man doesn't have to be the breadwinner, and that's okay. To each its own, right? For some people, they want to have joint bank accounts. So for some people, they want to have separate accounts. And that's one of the things Financial Peace University really taught us. It made us, even though we've talked about it before, now we got down to the nitty gritty. How much do you have in debt? Don't just tell me you have debt. How much? How much is student loans? And how much is you splurging every time you go to Brazil? I need to know your spending habits, right? I need to know if you have $100,000 in debt because of school, that's okay. That was an investment you made into your future. But if you're the type of person that you just like to spend money because it's there and you think it's your money because it's on a credit card, and the person you're with believes in having a debt-free life, you can see how there can be tension, right? Because you're living your life based on credit cards. She's living her life based on cash. So either you all have to come to a medium and figure out how we're going to make this work, or you might want to think about alternatives, because finances play a bit. And I'm not saying people don't make it work. I mean, in our class, we had about maybe 20 couples, and some of them were married. We weren't married when we took the class. We were engaged. I think we were engaged at that time. So we were planning for the future. But every couple, because they were so committed into making it work, they came to a middle ground. He said that I'm the saver. I wasn't always the saver. I became the saver when I discovered he was a spender. So, just being able to shift. I had to shift some things. He had to shift some things, but we were okay in the middle ground that we were at.
That's amazing.
I was going to add one thing about that. The finance thing is understanding as well. Like you said, people say money is not everything.
Yeah.
Money does answer a few things. I tell you,
absolutely.
Yeah. But man, you want to love your wife? Oh, make some good money. That love's going to come out. But we always have to understand that the standard of living and the quality of life are two different things. Your standard of living and the quality of life are two different things. So I can have a high standard of living where I'm living off credit card, I'm living off debts, and it's like I'm trying to make ends meet. Everything looks flashy on the outside, but then when we go back into the house, what's the quality of our life? When the emergencies, when our children have needs, what's the quality of the life we're giving them? Are we just putting the standard of living out there and then our quality of life suffers? So those are the questions that finances answers that if you get it right from the beginning.
Guys, it's a lot. It's a lot. You guys know I'm going to post this again, put it again, I'm going to post it again so you guys can watch it again. You can save it, you can share it. But before you go, this is something that's been heavy on my heart, and talking to a lot of my friends. We're living in a culture where we're like, we're living in a boot up culture. Shout out to LMA. That was my jam when it came out. And I feel like with millennials, we're so desperate to wanting to get booed up. And I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and she's at that age where she feels the pressure. And she was saying to me, Lysious, I feel like there's a double standard because I want to focus on like my career and just build that and go for what I want to go for. But my friends are telling me you're 26, you're 27, you haven't found somebody. And but when I listen to you guys talk, one of the things that I took away from what you said is you were both focused on God's purpose for your life when you met. Like you were each doing your own thing at the time. And I want you to speak on how important that is, because I think that there's something about being focused on God and what he has called you to do. When you're like really focused on that, that's when you find the one that's meant for you. You found her while you were in GNN and you were in church and she was on stage doing the Lord's work, And the last couple I spoke to last week, we're saying, 2 weeks ago, we're saying, he said, I was on the camera filming in my department and she was on stage dancing before the Lord when we met and when he felt the conviction. And I hear that a lot, and even reading through the Bible and even look at a lot of examples in our world today. There's something about being focused on God's purpose for your life. And I want you to speak to how important that is for a lot of us, doing your own thing, and just close out on that, and not being desperate about finding the one and being booed up, which I think is a big issue for us.
Yeah, I think it's a big issue because, we weren't designed to live this world independently.
Right.
We were designed to be around people. And the closest people you are with are usually the people you're in a romantic relationship with. So it's normal. But it's important for that to not be our focus. When you're walking in your purpose, and I am a strong believer that purpose can be seasonal. Just because you have a purpose in this time of your life doesn't mean that's going to be your purpose for the rest of your life. Right. When you're walking in your purpose and you're doing what God has called you to do, the Bible tells us that he will grant us our heart's desire. He already knows what you want. He knows what you need. Right. You stay committed to his work. You walk in his purpose, and he will arrange a situation for your Boaz to find your Ruth. You know, I don't believe in a woman chasing after a man. I do think it's important for him to find you. I think you need to make yourself available. I think you need to package yourself well so that you can be found. But I think when you're working, when you're doing God's work, my pastor always tells me, he says that you can never rob God. So all this time and effort you're investing in kingdom work and sowing into his ministry, God is looking out for you like, wow, Yemisi has dedicated so much time. I got her. I'm definitely going to take care of her because she's focused. She's focused on my work. She's focused on developing a relationship with me. Not only do I got her, but I'm going to make sure the person that is going to find her is going to be compatible with her. A person who's not going to pull her away from what she's currently doing, a person who's going to elevate her and motivate her to do greater things. It's so important for us to stay focused on the purpose and the season that we have in our lives right now. It's difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's difficult to not want to be booed up. But when you're focusing on doing what God has told you to do, things will work itself out. Now, everybody's timeline is going to be different. I'm not telling you that it'll happen in 3 months or 2 weeks. Everyone's timeline is different. So knowing that you have your own race to run is something that you always need to meditate on. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't, spend so much time following or stalking somebody on Instagram and thinking their life is perfect, and it really isn't. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors, right? You see their best self. That's what you see. But spending time focusing on God and building a relationship with God, not because you want him to give you something, your mate, your spouse, but because you want to know him better. You'll get to a stage where you'll be content with just being with God, and that's when he's going to bring that person into your life.
That's amazing.
And if I can round it up, sum it up, I would say that the journey to finding the right person is becoming the right person. The journey to finding that right person is becoming the right person.
So instead of trying to find the one, focus on being the one.
The right person. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, the power in that. Once you discover that man, and me looking for a person, so I'm looking for this banging chick. I mean, my boo. I want her to be all that, man. So now I've got to think to myself, how do I become the person that she's looking for? How do I become the person that can sustain that woman that I'm looking for? So that's what I'm focused on right now. Wait, man, I want to be a priest in my own house. So the woman I'm looking for, I want her to look up to me as the priest in the house. So in this season I'm in, how do I become that priest? I want to be the CEO in my house. So in this season, that I'm waiting for her, what business do I need to launch? So that way when she meets me, I'm already a CEO. You know what I'm saying? So that's once you discover that, the journey to finding the right person is about becoming the right person. It begins to just lift the burdens.
And it releases you. It releases you from wanting to, thinking differently, right? We talk about the woman being a helpmate. But what is he helping you do? What are you doing? What are you doing? I want to be able to help you with what you're doing, with your purpose, with your vision, with your ministry. And I'm not just talking about church, but I'm talking about the ministry of being a husband, being a head of the household. But if you're not doing anything, how can I be your helpmate? You need to have something for me to help you with. So focus on being the best you. I'm going to focus on being the best me, improving in every way I can, not to be like somebody else, but to be the best version of me.
And now, can you imagine if 2 people who became the best version of themselves now meet?
Okay, see, now you guys are going to ask questions when I'm getting ready to end the show.
I did see some questions coming in.
Okay, we have like 4 minutes. If you guys can answer before you go. Somebody says, if you're already in a relationship, how do you increase God's presence in that relationship?
All right. So it's a good one. It's a very good one. It's gonna take some tough questions. It's some tough decisions.
Right.
Number one, if it's a toxic relationship, you need to separate, get some help.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's toxic, where there's abuse, there's what's that word I was using on Sunday? When there's dishonor in it, you want to get help. So you want to separate and get help for some. I'm not saying forever, but you want to get help. So how do you now bring God's presence into that relationship? First is the identification process of knowing that, oh, I do need God's help. That's the good place to start. And once you do that, you got to pray about it and really submit. Now, years ago, I prayed about a relationship I was in, and we're both Christians, and everything seemed fine. But the moment I took it to God, like, you know what, God, I want this. If it's your will, let it work. If it's not your will, don't let it. It was almost like God was just waiting for me, like, yeah, I'm about to break this up. And it hurts. Yeah. I'm telling you, it hurts. It hurt.
It hurts.
It
yeah.
hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, that pain I went through, man, I don't wish that on nobody. So I have a friend that was telling me about one he was going through, and I was like, I know, I've been there.
Yeah. But
on the other side of that, is this. So just learning to know. So learning, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. So if you really focus on God and say, hey, God, if this is your will for us, just teach us what we need to do in this moment. Yeah. If you need to separate for some time so you can work on yourself, work on building yourself back up, then you need to do that. If you both together can go to counseling and make sure that, like I said, can keep sex out of it. It just complicates it. I'm not saying sex is bigger than any of the other sins, but I always ask this question, and I think I was at a singles conference and I asked that, can you tell me the first time you told a lie? And nobody could raise up their hand. I said, fine. I said, can you tell me the first time you had sex? And everybody laughed, because you remember that first time. Yeah. I mean, that years later, I still know the first time. Yeah. The reason it's just there's that glue, it's that soulmating thing that we haven't really figured out. Yeah. There's a tie. So if you're not married, it's just you gotta stay away from it to be able to really fix. And the beauty about God is, he never judges. He sent Jesus to die for us so that anything that we do, anything we can do, he can forgive us. So go back to him with a whole heart and ask him, invite him into that relationship. I mean, there's so much we can talk about. Invite him back into that relationship, counseling again.
I'm going to have to bring you guys back. And guys, listen, what we're going to do next time is you guys should have your questions ready. I only have about 30 minutes or an hour to do this. And have your questions ready next time. And we're going to probably bring them back again and we can talk more, because you guys have a lot of questions. And the more we talk, the more questions that you guys have. It's amazing. And it's so many different things. And even personally, like, one of the experiences I had was when you talk about praying to God about it, the moment I did that, I knew it was hard to let go. And it was hard to let go. That was a challenge.